Hey everybody, Casey here with Life Abstract Gaming, and recently the game industry has been in a spiral over Sony's continued refusal to accept the growing popularity of crossplay. If you don't know, crossplay is a feature for certain online games that let those multiplayer communities play with one another across different hardware. For example, you can buy a game on your PC and play online with and against your friends who have the same game on an Xbox One. On the surface, this doesn't really sound like that big of a deal, but up until recently, it's something that has only ever existed in very rare cases, and has tended to only be between a home console and PC, like the example I just gave. Part of this reason is based on the bitter rivalry that has existed between hardware manufacturers. The console wars, as they're more popularly known, pretty much radicalizes consumer support behind game consoles and has people arguing passionately in support of any and everything their preferred console maker chooses to do. This behavior has been instigated by those game companies for decades. Remember the legendary ad campaigns from Sega dissing Nintendo, or Sony's Crash Bandicoot ads doing the same? Let's not forget about Sony's 2013 jab at Microsoft when the original plan for the Xbox One wouldn't let you share a physical game disc.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
There are fans who take this rivalry a bit too seriously, but I've always considered it all in good fun. It's been the status quo in the industry since its inception, and then this happened. Two of the three major console manufacturers just did an ad campaign together promoting crossplay. It was even followed up by a cute Twitter back and forth painting the two companies as BFFs, and as wholesome as all of this sounds on the surface, is probably one of the most powerful and direct disses to Sony I've ever seen. Crossplay has in recent years become far less of a novelty, and some of the most popular multiplayer games are pushing the feature and players are all for it. Yet Sony continues to be the odd man out, declining to allow its user base to play those same games with others, and their reasoning has been less than helpful for their public image. Eurogamer asked Sony Interactive Entertainment Head of Sales and Marketing, Jim Ryan, why the PS4 wasn't supporting crossplay. He said, "We've got to be mindful of our responsibility to our install base. We have a contract with the people who go online with us that we look after them, and they are within the PlayStation curated universe. Exposing what in many cases are children to external influences we have no ability to manage or look after, it's something we have to think about very carefully." This is a BS excuse. Using the idea that they're protecting children from the horrors of the internet doesn't make sense, because any child safety features to limit multiplayer access would still function exactly the same whether they could play with other PlayStation users or not. Not even mentioning that Nintendo, the most kid-friendly brand of the three console makers, are still on Sony's block list. It's an excuse that just doesn't make a lot of sense, and a former employee confirmed just that. John Smedley, ex-president of Daybreak Game Company, which was once called Sony Online Entertainment, tweeted, "When I was at Sony, the stated reason internally for this was money. They didn't like someone buying something on an Xbox and it being used on a PlayStation. Simple as that. Dumb reason, but there it is." And of course, why wouldn't it be about money? Sony is a huge company and they have bottom lines to maintain and investors to please. But then again, why can't you say the same thing for Microsoft and Nintendo? One of the biggest defenses for Sony's decision from their player base is that Sony is winning the console war, and last generation when Microsoft was first in hardware sold, Sony was the one that wanted crossplay and Microsoft said no. Which means turnabout is fair play. This isn't exactly true though. The only place I could find any kind of statement from these two companies regarding wanting or not wanting crossplay was from a 2011 Kotaku article about a failed online shooter RPG called Defiance. The author, Stephen Totillo, was seeing an early build of the game and was shocked to see its multiplayer being demoed on both an Xbox 360 and a PS3, playing one another online. The developers were quick to state that it was just internal testing and wouldn't be a feature in the final game, before sort of shifting the blame for that onto Microsoft. Totillo followed up with Microsoft to confirm when he was told that they did state they wouldn't allow it. We have a high level of expectation for our game developers to ensure that all live experiences remain top-notch. Because we can't guarantee this level of quality or control the player's experience on other consoles or gaming networks, we currently do not open our network to games that allow this crossover capability. Sony was never involved in this initial request for crossplay with Microsoft, and when asked, their PR team never came up with an official response to it. That still doesn't absolve the fact that in 2011, Microsoft did say no to the idea of crossplay. So what changed? A big shift in the landscape of games has been the emergence of games as a service. Players coming back to an online experience for months and years after release with new content waiting for them was not something common on consoles last generation. It's something that makes a bigger pool of online players much more important to both gamers and developers alike. One other factor that I don't think a lot of people are really looking at is a change in leadership. In 2014, Phil Spencer was appointed to head of Xbox, now Executive Vice President of Gaming, and one of his biggest tenets was refocusing the Xbox brand to be more consumer-friendly. A lot of these more progressive features are thanks to his leadership. Nintendo also had a shakeup due to the untimely death of longtime President Satoru Iwata in 2015. Nintendo has since filled the position with Shuntaro Furukawa, who is on the younger side being born in the 70s, and has designs on expanding Nintendo's role in the mobile space. Sony, on the other hand, is still led by Shuhei Yoshida, who's been in the role of president since 2008. And though he's a beloved, charismatic guy, some of his policies could still be informed by those previous generations, especially since they're currently in first place. But the outcry for Sony to change its position is getting louder. One of the biggest hits to their defense was with Nintendo's release of Fortnite on the Switch. The game allowed crossplay with PC, Xbox One, and mobile device users, but not Sony, and it pretty much blamed them right on the error screen. With one of the biggest games on the planet locking you out of your account if you happen to also play it on your PS4, Sony had to say something, and Sean Layton, the head of Sony Computer Entertainment of America, did. We're hearing it. We're looking at a lot of the possibilities. You can imagine that the circumstances around that affect a lot more than just one game. I'm confident we'll get to a solution which will be understood and accepted by our gaming community while at the same time supporting our business. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a roundabout no to me. Add in the fact that Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, accidentally turned on crossplay between Xbox One and PS4 players years ago, which proves that it's nowhere near as complicated as Sony execs want you to believe. For all this negative press Sony is getting by revealing how anti-consumer they are, what they may end up gaining by locking their player base to one online ecosystem could end up losing them much more in a future utopia where all games can be played with friends regardless of the system they choose. So, what do you think about Sony's position on crossplay in 2018? Are they right to hold out as the current hardware frontrunner, or is it an antiquated stance that needs to change? Let us know. We're listening.